Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 8 leaks just keep coming, and the newest wave is giving us a surprisingly complete picture of what Samsung might be planning for its next-gen foldable lineup. Everything from the rumored release date to potential pre-order perks, plus early hands-on impressions from someone who claims they actually held the devices. If you've been waiting for a real shakeup in Samsung's foldable strategy, this might be the closest thing yet. According to the latest leaks, the Galaxy Z Fold 8 lineup is expected to include two models, but not in the way you might assume. Instead of two phones that look and feel mostly the same. It sounds like Samsung could be splitting the identity of the Fold series into two distinct directions. One that sticks closely to the previous design, and another that changes the form factor in a big way. Here's the rumored lineup. First, there's the Galaxy Z Fold 8 Ultra, said to match the overall design language and form factor of the Galaxy Z Fold 7. In other words, this Ultra model reportedly keeps the familiar Fold footprint, the tall cover display on the outside, the large fold-out tablet-style screen on the inside, and a general shape that feels like a continuation of what Samsung has been refining for years. Then, there's the standard Galaxy Z Fold 8, which, based on leaks, might be the more interesting device of the two. This model is rumored to adopt a new form factor featuring a much wider inner display. And if that's true, it could fundamentally change how the Fold feels and functions day to day, especially for people who use the inside screen for typing, multitasking, reading, and media. Now, the Ultra branding is where things start to get confusing, because when you hear Ultra, you expect the best of the best, the premium build, the best display, the biggest upgrade set, the most advanced hardware. But based on the latest hands-on commentary, the Ultra name may not mean what you think it means this year, and that's causing some serious questions about what Samsung is actually trying to communicate with this lineup. A leaker known as Lanzuk, posting on Naver, shared hands-on impressions of the Galaxy Z Fold 8 series hardware, and their first big reaction wasn't about cameras or performance or even battery. It was about feel, specifically the feel of the wider Fold 8 model in the hand. They called the weight of the wider device unbelievable, but not because it's necessarily heavier on a scale. The key phrase here is perceived weight. Basically, the leaker suggests that the updated, wider form factor changes how the phone balances in your hand, how it distributes weight across your grip, and how natural it feels when you open it up and start using the larger screen. Sometimes a device can weigh the same as last year, but feel dramatically lighter or heavier, depending on how the shape and width affect leverage and comfort. And in this case, the leaker describes the wider Fold 8 as feeling so different that it feels like a new beginning. That's a strong statement, especially considering that the Galaxy Z Fold 7 was already seen by many as a meaningful refinement in usability and ergonomics. If this leak is accurate, Samsung's wider Fold 8 could be the model that finally makes the inner screen feel less like an unfolded novelty and more like a truly practical mini tablet you want to use every day. But then the tone of the leak shifts. Because after praising the feel of the wider Fold 8, the leaker starts questioning the purpose of the Galaxy Z Fold 8 Ultra name altogether. According to their impressions, the differences between the Ultra and the wider model might not be Ultra in the way consumers typically expect. In fact, Lanzuk suggests that the only noticeable advantages of the Ultra model are related to the display, specifically the display pixels and the crease. And notably, those display-related details are said to be better on the Ultra than on the wider device. That's an important point, because it implies Samsung may be prioritizing different strengths across the lineup rather than simply making one phone better in every way. The leak claims Samsung is using thicker ultra-thin glass, often referred to as UTG, in the Ultra model. The reason? Twofold: improved sturdiness and a better crease. If Samsung can tighten up the crease visibility and make the fold feel smoother or less pronounced, that's a real quality-of-life improvement. It's one of the most common things people notice when they first handle a foldable phone, and it's still one of the easiest things for critics to point at. So if the Ultra has the cleaner crease and the sharper display characteristics, what does that mean for the wider Fold 8? It could mean Samsung is experimenting with trade-offs, giving the wider model a more transformative shape and feel, while reserving the most refined display engineering for the model that sticks with the established Fold design. In other words, the Ultra may be less about huge feature gaps and more about polish, especially around the folding display itself. Still, If the main differences are pixels and crease, that opens the door to a bigger question. Is Samsung using Ultra branding to justify a higher price for upgrades that might feel minor to most people? Because for many buyers, the bigger story is usability. A wider inner display could improve typing, split-screen multitasking, and content viewing in a way that's immediately obvious. Meanwhile, a slightly better crease in display pixel characteristics, while valuable, might not feel like a dramatic ultra leap unless Samsung makes the improvements very noticeable in real-world use. Now, let's talk release timing because the latest leak gets very specific. In a follow-up post, Lanzuk claims that the Galaxy Z Fold 8 and Galaxy Z Fold 8 Ultra will hit store shelves on August 7th, presumably referring to Korea. That date matters because it gives us a clearer window for how Samsung could run pre-orders and pre-registration, and it also lines up with the broader seasonal launch pattern Samsung has used for foldables. Even more interesting, the leak suggests Samsung's pre-registration period could be shorter than usual, cut down to just a few days prior to release. That's a potential shift in strategy. Samsung often builds a longer runway of reservations, trade-in hype, and pre-order promotions to drive early adoption. If the pre-registration window really is shorter this time, it could mean Samsung is tightening the entire launch timeline, or it could mean the company is confident the Fold 8 series will sell without needing as long of a hype cycle. Pricing, however, is still a big unknown. The leak indicates the price remains unclear at this stage, which is exactly the kind of detail that tends to surface later, often closer to the event, sometimes even right before pre-orders open. But we do have new chatter about pre-order perks. According to the leak, Samsung's doubled storage promotion may still be on the table. That's the familiar deal where you pre-order a phone with, say, 256GB of storage, and Samsung upgrades you to 512GB at no extra cost, or something similar depending on region and configuration. However, there's a catch this time. The rumor is that there will be more conditions attached to eligibility for the doubled storage perk. That could mean limited colors, limited retailers, limited quantities, specific carrier plans, or requirements tied to Samsung's own online store and account systems. Samsung has done versions of this before, but if the conditions are tighter, some buyers may find it harder to actually get the best deal unless they move quickly or purchase through specific channels. So if you're planning to buy a Galaxy Z Fold 8, and if these leaks are accurate, the best advice is simple. Pay close attention to the fine print when pre-orders go live, because the headline deal might not apply to every configuration. As for the announcement date, the expectation right now is that Samsung will unveil the Galaxy Z Fold 8 series on July 22. If that's true, it sets up a roughly 2-week window between announcement and the on-shelf release date of August 7th, which is plausible for Samsung's launch cadence in certain markets. So let's recap what the newest Galaxy Z Fold 8 leaks are suggesting. Two models, Galaxy Z Fold 8 and Galaxy Z Fold 8 Ultra, the standard. Fold 8 could introduce a wider inner display and a new form factor that changes the feel dramatically, early. Hands-on impressions describe the wider model's perceived weight as unbelievable in a good way, suggesting improved ergonomics and balance. The Fold 8 Ultra, despite the name, may mainly differentiate itself through display-related refinements like better pixels and a reduced crease. Samsung may be using thicker ultra-thin glass on the Ultra model to improve durability and crease appearance. A rumored in-store. Release date points to August 7, at least for Korea. The announcement is expected around July 22nd. Pre-order perks may still include doubled storage, but with more restrictions or conditions than before, and pricing remains unknown for now. If all of this ends up being true, the Galaxy Z Fold 8 series could represent a subtle but meaningful shift for Samsung. One Fold model focused on a new, more practical shape, and another focused on display perfection and refinement, even if the Ultra branding feels questionable based on what we're hearing so far. Now the real question is this. Which one would you rather have? The Fold that feels like a new beginning with a wider display, or the Fold that keeps the familiar design but delivers the cleanest crease and sharpest screen? We won't have to wait long to find out what's real and what's just noise, because if Samsung does announce the Fold 8 series on July 20th, the full story is right around the corner.